Happy Wednesday. Today is June 10th and we're having a medium nice day here right now. I think, let's see, the temperature. It's supposed to be 100, but right now it's only 91, so that's not too bad. Maybe it won't actually get up to 100 today. But the humidity's not bad, and in the house it's pretty comfortable. So how are you all today? Did you do your homework? I saw quite a few people doing homework. That's very cool. So let me show you a quick thing. Let's see. Excuse me. This is where we were last week, remember? And we're going to move forward. Yay! So the way I teach, excuse me, I don't usually cough, and I'm not sick. Allergies. The way I teach is we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So the first thing we'll do is review a little bit of what we covered last week, and then we'll move forward with what we're going to do this week. So let's see who's on here so far. Be sure to give me thumbs up. Evelyn, hello, Evelyn. And Dolise, hello. Francoise, Fatima, Marilyn, Barbara Moog Schaefer from Southwest Germany, hello. Trying to stay awake. I'm so sorry that it's so late at night there. Carol Brasino, Belinda Drabble, Luana Hendricks, Marie Economopoulos from Germany, hello, another late nighter. John Savoy, or Jean from Hawaii, Elizabeth from Sweden, Lola Lou 57 from Central PA, Andy, Emily Beaton, hello Emily, Rona Shane, hi, Rona, Jane Hart, Diane Eddy, Elaine Mizuka, Cheryl Teasdale, Sylvia Earle, Deborah Cisneros, Sergio Navarro from Spain, Jackie from Bakersfield, hi Jackie, Deborah Cisneros, hello, Kathy Leonard, Kelly Mycat, Lena Matthews, Deb Jewett. She said she got her homework done. Good. We're going to cover that. Okay. Ruth Stubbins, Patty Shanks, J.D. Rasmussen, Joyce is her name, Pamela Dean, Sandy Rain, and Marie Tobita from New York. Hello, everyone. And Trevster. Yay, you made it, Trevster. Yay. Carol Corcoran. So last week we covered the basic, how do you start an I-cord. I also showed you several different ways to start an I-cord and several ways to bind off an I-cord, right? And then we moved on to doing a knitted on I-cord onto the edge of a fabric, not applied I-cord. Applied I-cord is when you add the I-cord after you've finished the knitting. We're going to cover that in a future episode, but that's not what we're doing right now. What we're doing right now is knitted on I-cord. So you're knitting it on in the same rows that you're doing the body of the work. Okay, so Amber joined us. Yay! Hi, Amber and Dee Verity. Share this with your friends. You still have time to share it, like on Facebook, Ravelry, Reddit, anywhere where you do social media for knitting. You can still share this right now, and people can get in on it. So let's take a look at what you were supposed to do for homework, okay? Let me see. Okay, here we go. And I got my better camera going. Yay! It's a long story. So the company that I use to make this particular camera, this is the camera that I use when I'm teaching real life classes. It's my Elmo. It's a document scanner, but it works great for teaching knitting because I can throw the image up on a big screen or a TV, the wall, whatever. I have a projector. I have a whole setup for teaching live in classes. And it has this itty bitty little connector that is hard to find. And I've gone through 2 of them already. And the company does sell them. You can buy them. They're like $3 or $4. But the shipping is $38 for that stupid little cable. So I went on to Amazon and I found one that looked just like it. And I bought it. Of course, it didn't work. Who knows why, but I could not get it to work. So I went back on Amazon and I bought 2 more that looked like I thought, if I'm gonna, they're only $3 or $4 a piece. They're so darn inexpensive, and I have Amazon Prime, so the shipping's free. So I ordered 2 more that looked like they should work. Well, one of them worked. Thank goodness I hit pay dirt. So that's what we're using right now. Okay, so it's working. So last week what I had you do for homework was I had you do this piece right here, and where you started out with the single slip stitch at the edge, then 2 slip stitches, then 3 slip stitches. So you're making basically, for all practical purposes, a 1-stitch I-cord here, 2-stitch I-cord here, and 3-stitch I-cord here. And it looks really nice. And blocked it, right? You blocked it? Looks good. This is, and then you were supposed to make a little I-cord and block it. And also just a piece of stockinette. I'm going to use this as my example. And what I wanted you to do is to measure your row gauge on each piece. And then try to figure out how many short rows you would do on this piece to compensate. This is one that I did afterwards. This is the one I used in the little video. By any chance, did any of you watch the separate little videos that I made to back this up? So if you wanted to refresh without having to go through this entire hour-long thing, I've made little bitty snippets of videos so you can watch each thing. So this is the one I made for that. And in this one, I did a short row in the I-cord edging every other right side row. So I'd do a right side row here, wrong side. Then I'd do a short row, right side, short row. Wrong side, right side, wrong side, short row, right side, short row, like that. And as I showed you last time, this 3-stitch I-cord is fairly stretchy, right? So it has some give to it, and it will block out somewhat. Now, when I measured my last time, I think I got 6 stitches, 6 rows to the inch in this I-cord, and 7 rows to an inch in the stockinette stitch fabric. And we were talking about, okay, so how would you compensate, right? And a lot of people, I've seen their responses on Facebook and Ravelry. A couple people got it right. So it takes 2 rows of stockinette to make 1 row of this I-cord, right? And you're measuring the gauge on this I-cord. So every 2 rows of stockinette, there's 1 row of I-cord. So let's say you were getting 7 and 7, just to make it easy. That means that every other row you should be doing a short row here to compensate, because there's twice as many rows in this as there are in this. And I have a fly in here. You know, when you're doing something live, you never know what's going to happen. This first time I've had a fly. I'm sure one of my granddaughters left the door open. But because the 3-stitch I-cord is so stretchy, it has a lot of give, it gives it some room to stretch on the edge of your fabric there as well. Okay, so this one has like a ratio of 3 to 4. And then we have the 2-stitch I-cord, and compare it. Hardly any stretch compared to the 3-stitch I-cord. Do you see the difference? So if we were going to use, and I'm getting about the same rows per inch on this as this, because I used the same needle and the same yarns, and I counted it. So if we were going to use this I-cord on the edge, a 2-stitch I-cord rather than a 3-stitch I-cord, guess what we would need to do? We would need to make a short row every right side row. So it's a 2 to 1 ratio. So what we're going to cover this week is exactly that. Well, we're going to cover some other stuff too. So here I added a 2-stitch I-cord to a stockinette fabric, and I made a little buttonhole. So this has a short row every right side row. There is a short extra row in the I-cord because it takes that much for it to have the same amount of stretch as the body of the fabric. Now, you know, stockinette likes to curl to the back. This is blocked. I did block all my swatches, which as you make your homework, I want you to block your swatches too, okay? Because you only take finished measurements from blocked swatches. So this lays pretty flat. Looks pretty good. But you know that straight stockinette stitch has a tendency to curl back, right? And chances are, over time, this is going to want to curl to the back. So I tried something different. I'm always experimenting. So I did the same thing. I didn't put the buttonhole on it. But what I did do is I put a column of pearls between the I-cord and the body. I like it. This is how I would do it. You can see that column of pearls right there. Also, when you turn these to the wrong side, basically what I'm doing and what I'm going to show you in today's lesson is how to make this contrast color on here. It's intarsia. I'm going to show you how to work it in intarsia to put that contrast color edging on as you go rather than doing it later. Isn't that cool? I love it! I can see them doing this to all kinds of things. In future, next week probably, we're going to talk about mitering corners. And I'm going to also show you how to work this all the way around the edge as you go. So that instead of binding off like this, you would do a little I-cord bind off across the top. So this white would just carry, and guess what you're going to have to calculate? You're going to have to calculate stitch gauge compared to row gauge. And I'm going to teach you that. Okay? So today we're going to learn how to do this. And another thing we're going to learn is this. This one is the I-cord on the edge, the 3-stitch I-cord. But what I did was, and we'll bring this over here to compare. Let's get this one. I've got all these swatches here. Okay, so this is the same thing, same number of, I think this has one more stitch. And in the homework, you're going to have this and one of these swatches in the homework for this week, okay? Look at this. So think of the applications of this. Think, what if you were doing a scarf? You know how scarves, if you don't have some sort of garter stitch on the edge or something, they curl back? Think about using this I-cord. And what I did is I put 2 columns of pearls between the body and the I-cord. And you could do this with any kind of stitch pattern. This particular one, I incorporated some things that I've taught before, and that is a cable compensation cast on, or the first row, and a cable compensation bind off. And do you see how tidy that looks at both ends? So in this swatch, the homework swatch, not only are you going to learn about, it has the short rows added into the I-cord, but you're also going to learn or refresh, if you've already learned with me, about how to do the cable cast on, the increases for cable compensation, cable flare compensation, and the decreases at the other end for cable flare compensation. What do you think about that? Does that sound interesting? So, several of you got your gauge correct last time on calculating, and that was really good. And all of the swatches that I looked at on Ravelry and Facebook looked really nice. I think not everybody wants to do the homework, but for those that you do, this is how you learn and you build it into your brain and your memory, and it becomes part of your repertoire for your future knitting. So let's see. Let's start with doing this swatch first. And if you have needles and yarn there and you want to do this with me, that's perfectly fine. Okay? I'm going to go slow enough that you can do that. I just love this. Isn't that the cutest thing you ever saw? I love it. Okay, so you're going to need a knitting needle. And this can be straights, circulars or double points, it does not matter. And you're going to need 2 colors of yarn. I'm going to use the white and green. And the first thing you're going to do is cast on, this is a 2-stitch I-cord. You're going to cast on 2 stitches in your white or whatever color you're using. So I've got my 2 stitches. Then I'm going to cast on, I'd used 10 stitches of my green. So I'm just going to continue casting on. I'm going to cast on 10 stitches of green. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And see, you're also learning how to cast on 2 colors, aren't you? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I cast on 2. Now look how that happened there. It wants to twist around. On one side it looks like there's just 1 stitch. There's on the other 2. We want it where it looks like it's 2. Okay? And of course they're not going to be connected together yet, but they will be after the first row. I saw somebody say this looks hard. Anything that you don't know how to do looks hard. But once you learn how to do it, this is not hard at all and will give you stunning results. Okay? And you can use this for lots of other techniques, not just what I'm doing here. So we've got our 2 colors. So now we're going to turn. And I am a continental knitter, and I know some of you throw, but it's not about where the yarn's coming from. Disregard that. Just think about what are the needles doing, okay? So I'm going to purl until I come to the white stitches. I'm just purling across. I hope you all had a good week. It was pretty uneventful here. There's probably about 2.5 more weeks work on my daughter's house and they'll be moving home. And my hair is growing. Yay! I kind of like it though. I'm getting used to it. So we've purled across the green. Here's our white. And remember, one side looks like 1 stitch. We want it with the 2 stitches. Now, we're making an I-cord edge, so that means we're just going to slip these with the green yarn towards me. See, the green yarn's in the front because I'm purling. I'm just slipping these 2 to the right needle because we're making an I-cord edge, right? So I didn't work the white stitches. I just slipped them. They're now on my right needle. I turn my work. Now, here's the working yarn on the white. Here's the tail. You don't want to work with the tail, okay? That's the working yarn. Here's the tail. You don't want to work with the tail. That's the biggest mistake to make, and that happens easily. It happens to everybody. You're going to want to bring this is your working yarn right here. The green yarn or your primary color needs to come over the top of your I-cord yarn. And then you pick up your I-cord yarn. Okay, so the green is coming. Can you see that? Let me move all these strands out of the way. The green is coming over the top. All right? You pick up the white or the I-cord yarn. I'm going to call that the I-cord yarn. The green will be the body yarn. And you knit the first 2 stitches, keeping the green yarn out of the way. It's fiddly just to start that, but once you get started, it's not so bad. Knit those first 2 stitches. Now pull the white yarn tail, tighten it up so you don't have big loose stitches on there. Then you're going to make a purl stitch on the green. You're going to take your yarn and lay it over the top of the green. So now from the back you can see here's the white. the green's going to come under it. This is standard intarsia. And you're going to pull that up snug, and whoops, we're going to purl the first stitch because we're doing the purl. Purl. Snug it up, not too tight, and then knit to the end of the row. We'll be doing this exact same maneuver many times, so if you're just didn't get it, you'll get another chance in a second. So we've worked 3 rows in the green, but only 1 in the white. Return the work. We're going to purl until 1 stitch remains in the body yarn. And that 1 stitch is going to be a knit stitch. If you didn't get it the last time, we're coming up on your chance to get it this time. We're going to knit that stitch. That's going to be our column of purls on the right side of the fabric. Now, you bring the green over this way and pick up the white. So the green is going across the white. Can you see that? Slip the last 2 stitches to the right needle. You now have the white yarn or the I-cord yarn in your hand for tensioning. And you're going to knit the first 2 stitches. Knit, knit. Then you're going to slip those 2 stitches back and knit them again. And you're going to do this every single time. Now you'd work your intarsia. That means the white comes over the green, the I-cord comes over the top, the body yarn comes up underneath. In intarsia, you do that every time. So you'll always take the old color over the top, the new color from underneath, always. Then we're going to make a purl. Then we're going to work to the end of the row. I can see this on so many things. This is just the cutest little edge, very delicate looking, and you can either do it in a contrast color or the same color. Then we're going to purl until 1 stitch remains in the body yarn. And we're going to knit. Then we're going to bring the body yarn over the I-cord yarn. Old yarn at the top, new yarn underneath. Slip the last 2 stitches straight over. Now, if you were doing this on both edges, guess what? You would need a separate strand of white yarn over here. You'd need 2 little balls of your white yarn. So now we're going to knit, knit. Slip those 2 stitches back. So you can see we're just working an I-cord right up the edge. Just like doing a regular I-cord, but we're connecting it to the body via intarsia. Old yarn over the top, new yarn up underneath. Purl the first stitch, and you can see how my white yarn kind of came through to the front. You could just pull on it. It's no big deal. And work to the end of the row. And then we'll stop and take a look at this. See what we've got so far. Isn't that cute? And because we've got that little, let me put it over on the cable so the needle's not holding it flat. Because we made that little column of the reverse stockinette, the purl stitches there, it kind of makes a little ditch so that it keeps this edge from curling back. Now it wants to curl forward, which counteracts the curling back. We've got our little column of knits, which is the pearls on the front, so that pushes that column of white to the front, which is where you want to see it. Isn't that cool? Do you like that? So let's see, how would you make a buttonhole? I made a little buttonhole here. And I intended to have a button out here to put through it, but I didn't. Here's a dime. Here's a dime. Dime goes through it. Isn't that the cutest little buttonhole you ever saw? Can you imagine those up the front of a delicate sweater? Now, I chose the 2-stitch I-cord because I knew I was going to make a buttonhole. If you're making a heavier garment, you could use 3-stitch I-cord to make the buttonhole. And you don't have to do it in contrast color. I just want to teach you several different things. Whoops, we're on a wrong side row. Okay, so we're going to work back over and we're going to do a little buttonhole, okay? And of course, I always do my buttonholes on swatches first to make sure they fit my button. The biggest mistake I see people make in buttonholes for knitting is that they think that the buttonhole needs to be as big as the button. Knitting stretches so much. Your buttonholes do not need to be very big to accommodate a good-sized button. So do your buttonholes on swatches before you do them on your garment, because you certainly don't want to have big gaping buttonholes on your garment. I have lots of videos on all different kinds of buttonholes. So now we're going to knit that last stitch. And what are we going to do? We bring the old yarn over the top, the new yarn up from underneath, and we're going to slip the last 2 stitches for our I-cord. Now we're going to make a little buttonhole. So nobody's made a comment. Oh, here we go. Phew. I thought I'd lost you all. And you know, you can always play this back. And you can play it at fast speed or slow speed. And you know that Diana Danko always makes the timestamps that'll be posted on here about 24 hours later, so that if you want to go to a certain part and watch it over, you can. You don't have to watch the whole thing. Also, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, okay? So we're going to make a buttonhole. We're going to knit, knit, slip the stitches back, knit. We're just going to make some I-cord for a little while. And I think I just did 3 or 4 rows. It doesn't take very much. See, now we've got some space there. Let's do another one. This might be enough. Let's take a look. I think that's enough, okay? So now we're going to take the old yarn over the new yarn, pick up the new yarn. We take the old yarn over the top. It's on top. The new yarn underneath. It's the same way every time in intarsia, okay? Purl, and we're going to knit to the end of the row. Do you like this setup? Does it work okay for you? Is my mat too dark? Is this too dark, or is it okay? And I think the lighting's okay. It's not as good as I do for my regular videos, because I have, for this series, to have me and this on here, I use different lights. When I do my single videos, I use a light box. My yarn's getting tangled up here. And it's a different kind of lighting, and it would block me from this completely. So these are different lights than what I use for my short tutorials. Okay, Nina, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Oh, Marilyn says it's hard to knit and moment, but I think she means comment. I'm sorry, I expect so much from you. So this is looking good to me as far as the lighting and how it's functioning for me. I'm going to knit this stitch. Now, guess what are we going to do? Old yarn over the top, new yarn underneath. Come up from the bottom and slip the 2 stitches. This is the row where we're going to connect the buttonhole, okay? So we're going to knit our first 2 stitches, slip them back and do our short row. We're going to cross this yarn over the top, old yarn up from underneath, purl, and knit across the row. And then we'll take a look at our little buttonhole. Well, maybe I didn't do enough rows. Let's rip back. Yay! Oh, it's down here. Let's rip back. We need to do a couple more rows. It's too little. So we're just going to take this off the needles, pull out a couple of rows to where we reconnected. Now, somebody asked last time, and it was a really good question, is if you drop a stitch in your I-cord, how do you pick it back up? Well, you know that the second stitch that's knit should be, the last stitch that's knit should be to the left side, right? Because you're going to be pulling. So this is just perfect right here. So we're going to pick it up here and here, because the yarn should be coming from the leftmost stitch, correct? That is right there. And then we're going to pick these stitches up. Now, if you have trouble picking them up in the first row, I just pick them up however I can. But if you have problems, if they don't seem to line up, like these are really lining up, these are participating well, they're minding their manners, then I rip out one row, I tink a row 1 stitch at a time. So we're going to go over to here, and we're going to do a couple more I-cord rows, because that was not enough. We didn't get a buttonhole going there. I got too much distraction here. Okay, we're going to do 2 more rows. 1. Now, if you were just doing an I-cord and you drop some stitches, just pick them back up, whatever order you want, so that the leftmost stitch is where the yarn is. That's all that matters. That looks better. Take the white, the old yarn, the last used yarn over the new yarn. Bring it up and purl and knit to the end, and then we'll turn and come back. And you know what? Yes, I am a master knitter. I'm a TKGA certified master knitter. And people say, well, you don't make mistakes. Yes, I do. I make bigger mistakes. The better the knitter you are, the bigger the mistakes you make, because the more you're willing to work outside your comfort zone. And so when you do that, you tend to make mistakes. And they can be some doozies, let me tell you. But you just, it's just part of life. And like everybody says one of the things about knitting that is so awesome is you have redos. You can have a redo and nobody knows that you made the mistake. You don't have to advertise it, and it's like it never happened. Where else in life can you do that, where you make a big boo-boo and you can take it out and redo it as if it never happened? That's pretty awesome. Knitting and philosophy go hand in hand. Knit, drop the old yarn over the new, pick up the new, slip the 2 stitches, turn the work. It's very rhythmical. Knit, knit. Pass it back for the short row. What is a short row? A short row is a row that does not go to the end. And then we're going to do changed yarns, purl, knit, 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 knit to the end. And then we'll work back, then we'll look at it again, okay? And then I'm going to show you the swatch with the cable, how to get that started and how to end it. So you'll learn a little bit about cable flare in the next swatch, along with the I-cord edging. Now, I want to mention too, switch the yarn, slip, slip. Here's our little buttonhole. Isn't that cute? Where's my dime? Let's see if the dime will go through it. Yep, the dime goes through it. Isn't that cool? It doesn't need to be a very big buttonhole. Isn't that cute? I love it. And then on this side, what I like about intarsia, let me make this bigger. This isn't as smooth as my other camera, but it still works. Do you see? Let me get a pointer. You should see my desk here. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the white, see that where it connects, it looks like this. And where the green connects, it looks like this. Now, what does that remind you of? Have you ever looked at the back side when you do make short row turns, when it's all one color and you're making short rows? You get these little C's or reverse C's on the back of your project. So intarsia connections and short row connections have a lot in common. Deborah Cisneros says, that's what I love about knitting. Sometimes it can be like a meditation. Exactly. Exactly. And it's so good for your mind. But at the same thing, you're producing something from within you. It's not like giving birth to a child, but you're producing something from within you. It is your work. It's your work. It speaks for you. So that's enough of that swatch. Did you like that? Was that cool or what? I love it. Isn't that cute? Let me make it small again. This is, the zoom on this is not, hold on, I gotta use my right hand to do it. And it's pretty bright too. I think I need to make it less bright. Okay. All right. So let's move to the next swatch. Let me take this off of here. And I'm going to break this yarn with my scissors. It's enough of that one. And we're just going to use the green yarn now. And I'm going to show, and these are going to be in the homework. It'll be under, I'll write them up and they'll be underneath. So I wanted you to do that swatch. It's this one. It's this swatch with the pearl column, but with this buttonhole on it. Okay? Don't they look nice? Just really, really nice. It's this little finessing stuff that I just love about knitting. I could do it forever. Okay, so in this swatch, this is a 6-stitch cable. So we need 6 stitches for the cable. This is how you figure out your stitch count, okay? Oh, Carol says, no, she doesn't like it. She can't do it. I'm sorry. There'll be separate little videos on how to do these, so you can start and stop them. They'll be on, I'll link them up in the top here. There'll be links and down below, and also on my other channel. Okay, so this is a 6-stitch cable. And then I have 2 columns of pearls on either side. And then I have a 3-stitch I-cord on each side. So, Deborah says, nice to work along. I didn't realize what questions I would have as long as I was just thinking along. Exactly. That's why I want you to do the homework, or if you want to knit along with me, I'll go pretty slow because you won't know what questions you're going to have until you actually do it. There's a big difference between watching and thinking you understand and doing it. Okay, when you do it, you'll go, oh, well, mine doesn't look like that, or I have a loose stitch here, or it's not pulling up tight enough. You've got to actually do it. So, how many stitches are we going to need for this swatch? We need 6 for the cable, 2 for the pearl, 2 pearls here, 2 here, 3 here, 3 here. We can see the 2 columns of pearls on this side. So always, if you're counting stitches, look at both sides of your fabric, because when you look at this side, if you were just looking at, like, let's say you're looking at Facebook or a picture or something, and you want to duplicate a pattern. Let's see what happens if I turn my light down. No, it flickers. Okay. If you want to duplicate a pattern, you need to be able visually, which once you learn how to read your knitting, you can do that. This might look like 1 column of pearls, but it's really 2 columns of pearls. So we need 3, 4, 5, plus 6, that's 11, 12, 13, plus 3, that's 16, right? But I'm going to cast on 3 less, because when I do cable flare compensation for each cable that I'm going to have in my work, if it's an edge that you don't want it to flare out. Like if you were knitting a sweater and this were the bottom of the sweater and you want to be able to stretch easily around your hips, you would not use cable flare compensation at that point. You would not do what I'm going to show you right now. But let's say this is the top and at the neckline, you don't want it flaring up here. You want it to be nice and tidy around the neck. So then you would use cable flare compensation. And my rule of thumb is for however many number of stitches you have in the cable, you cast on half. So if this is a 6-stitch wide cable, I'm only going to cast on 3 stitches for it, because I'm going to increase 3 right away. So there's 3, 4, 5, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, plus 3 is 13. So I'm going to cast on 13 stitches for this swatch. So I'm going to do that. All right, and that's a right side. Now, speaking of long tail cast on, it's personal preference whether this is the right side or the wrong side. You can see that the other side looks different. This looks like pearl bumps, right? So I often use that as the first, is this the wrong side? So when you turn your work and you have your working yarn here, that means the first row would be a wrong side row. But if I'm doing a knit one, purl one ribbing or something like that, or a twisted rib design, I like to have this as the edge. I think it looks much nicer with knit one, purl one ribbing or a twisted rib design. So then my first row would be a right side row. Now, when you're reading patterns, they'll tell you row 1 is right side or wrong side or whatever, but it's up to you to determine. It's your knitting. And so if you like this to be on the right side, then row 1 would be a right side row. If you like this to be on the wrong side, row 1 would be a wrong side row. And I'm going to make it be a wrong side row. And remember, we're going to have those I-cord edges, which means we're going to slip the first 3 and the last 3 stitches, right? 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do 2 purl stitches, which on the wrong side would be knits. So we're going to knit 2. And then the center 3 stitches are going to be our cable, correct? What I'm going to do is let me make my picture big again, because you want to see this up close and personal. Okay, and we want it to focus. Focus. Okay, so I'm going to pick up a stitch from each of these 3 purl bumps. And I'm going to pick it up as a purl. So I'm going to go down. Let me put the yarn down. I'm going to take the tip of my needle and I'm going to go down in this purl bump right here. And if you want to stretch it out before, you can go up because sometimes it's easier. Stretch it out. Put your needle going down through it like that and make a stitch, a purl stitch. So now we have 1 new stitch over on the right needle. Put your yarn down again. I keep it in my hand, but if you're first, now the second stitch over here, we're going to go down in that stitch. I'm going to lift it up and stretch it first. And then I'm going to go down behind there. And I'm going to make a purl stitch. Whoops, I dropped it. Now I have 2 stitches, new stitches. Then the third one is going to be right here. And again, I'm going to go from the bottom and lift it up and stretch it out so I can get my needle in there. I'm stretching it out. And I'm going to put my needle going from the top down. And I'm going to purl through that. This is the same as picking up a fabric from behind. I have several videos on this type of work. Come on. Picking up a new fabric from behind. So now we have 3 new stitches over here. And then we're going to purl those 3 stitches that we picked up under. And this is tight. And it takes practice. That's why you're going to do a swatch. And then we're going to knit 2. Those are our 2 purls. And we're going to, with the yarn forward, we're going to slip the last 3 stitches. Now typically for cables, let's say it's a 4-stitch cable. Usually, under most circumstances, you will do a cable crossing every 4 rows. If it's a 6-stitch cable, usually, not always, you're going to do a cable crossing every 6 rows. So now we're going to work our 3 I-cord stitches. We're going to slip them back and make a short row, because we've got two things going on here. We've got the cable and the I-cord. Then we're going to purl the 2 stitches. We're going to knit 6 across the cable. Purl 2 and knit 3. We're going to slip those 3 back and do a short row. Can't tell much yet. Now we're going to do a wrong side row. This wrong side row, we're going to slip the first 3 stitches, knit 2, purl 6, Amber, I like the old Norwegian cast on too, but in this particular instance, the long tail works really good because I want those purl bumps so that I can pick them up. Okay, let's turn the work. Now we're starting to see the bottom of that cable crossing, so let's work a right side row. And we don't have to do a short row this time. We're doing it every other right side row for the 3-stitch I-cord. It's looking good. Another wrong side row, right side row, wrong side row, and then we'll do the next cable crossing. And I'll show you how I do cable crossings. There's a lot going on in this little swatch. You know, one of the topics that we can talk about too is how to read a pattern and how to alter the pattern to fit you and how you would do that. Slip these. Now we need to do a short row, right? Because we didn't on the last one. Or did we? Did we do a short row on the last one? I don't know. It's not going to matter all that much. What matters is you do the same thing on both sides. I'd also like to teach a lot more about seaming, you know, seaming different fabrics together. I can think of an endless number of things of finessing your knitting. But what I would like you to do in return is to share my videos so that more people can see them and more people watch them. Now we're going to do a return row. And the next right side row is going to be a cable crossing row. Is this picture too big? Is it too big right now? I don't think it's as clear as the smaller picture. All right. Okay. Now we're going to do a cable crossing row. Let me make this a little smaller because I think it focuses better when it's smaller. Okay, here we go. We did a short row last time, so we don't need to do it this time. Now we're going to do a cable crossing without a cable needle, okay? So we have 3 stitches and 3 stitches, and we want these 3 stitches right here to cross in front of these 3. So this is a 3 over 3 right cross. That means these 3 stitches are coming in front of these and crossing to the right. A 3 over 3 left cross means these 3 are coming to the front and going to the left. So this is a 3 over 3 right cross, okay? So the way I do it is I take my right needle and I put it into that second set of 3 stitches below the left needle, like this. Then I pinch it in the back with my thumb and my finger, those first 3 stitches, not very hard, and I pull my left needle out of the first 3 stitches. And then I put it back into those first 3 stitches. So now I have the second set on the right needle, the first set on the left needle. I bring these over and put them on at the beginning of the needle. Now there's other ways to do this, and I have a video on 2 different ways to do it. Then you just knit them. So I'll link that video up here in the corner, and you can come back and watch it if you want. There'll also be a link in the description down below the video. But you'll have to wait till tomorrow to see that because it won't be on there today. So now we have made the cable crossing. Isn't that pretty? So I'm going to quickly do up until the next cable crossing, and then I'm going to show you how to bind off using this cable flare compensation. Doesn't that look nice? Now what I like about this is it makes a nice, smooth, straight edge at the bottom. Whereas if there's another way to do this, and that would be to cast on the full number of stitches and make the cable crossing on the first row. In that case, you get your folded over stitches like this, and it makes a big lump on the bottom of your work. This does not. It makes this, like if this was the neckline, do you see how nice that looks? Okay, so I'm going to quickly, you can watch. I can't speed it up, I'm sorry, because this is live, but I'm going to work up to the next cable crossing so that I can show you how to do a cable flare bind off. It's really cool. I love it. So this is row 2. The row 1 is the cable crossing, and so we're going to do 6 rows quickly. Now, I'm going to be doing those boot camp classes, and they're for people who've been knitting forever, as well as people who are brand new knitters. You will learn something. Everybody learns something. But I've had several people say, well, they want to learn how to knit continental. This is an excellent time to do it. In the boot camp classes, though, I do show throwing and continental. So they'll work for both people. But some people, it's a great opportunity to learn continental. It's handy to know more than one way to knit, especially if you like to do double knitting or any type of color work where you're working with 2 yarns at the same time. Of course, you can use them both in the same hand, but it's nice to be able to use both hands. And it's really good for your brain. Okay, short row. I might need to use a less brilliant yarn, less reflective. I'll work on it. These will get better and better, you know. I'm constantly trying to make it better. This is 3. Oh, Deborah says, practice brushing your teeth with your left hand. Yes, exactly. It's so good for you to practice using both sides of your brain. Piano players know that. Violinists, most people that play musical instruments where it requires both hands, that's using both sides of your brain at the same time. See, and I can actually knit watching the screen, because that's how I do it when I'm in class. Okay, one more wrong side row. Travis said he'd be too scared for his teeth. It'd be funny to make a movie of it. And your mirror'd probably get a lot of toothpaste on it. Splatters. Okay, so this coming up right side row is going to be the row where we're going to bind off. And I'm going to do a cable flare compensation bind off. Isn't that pretty? So three-dimensional. I just love it. I love this cast on down there. I love the way it looks. That is my own invention. Okay, I'm going to bind off. I wrote an article about it in Cast On Magazine a long time ago. I've been doing it for a long time. Okay, now here we are at the cable. And normally this would be a cable crossing row. But instead what we're going to do is we're going to knit stitches together. We're going to knit, so let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll number the stitches, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to knit together stitch 1 and 3, 4, 2 and 5, and 3 and 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to move stitch 1 over to the right needle. Then we're going to grab stitch 4 and pull it to the head of the line. We're going to take the other 2 off and put them back on, just like doing a cable crossing without a cable needle. We'll put this back here, put this back here, and we're going to knit them together. Now, if this were a left cross, you would SSK them, okay? Now we've got stitch 2 and 3 and 5 and 6, and we're going to put stitch 2 and 5 together. So we move to stitch 2 over here, grab stitch 5 and move it to the head of the line, put stitch 2 back, knit these together. I have a whole video on this. And we're left with stitch 3 and 6 together. We don't have to move any of these, okay? Knit those together. Whoops, we got to back up because I was going to bind these off. But they're still in the proper order. So we're going to knit those together, bind off, knit these together, bind off, knit these together. Valerie has a question. Valerie says, it's funny, I crochet left-handed, but I knit with my right hand being the main hand. I can do color work with both hands. I learned to crochet first, and I taught myself to knit, so I just automatically taught myself to knit with my left hand. Dee says, do any of you use this I-cord for shawl edging? You could. Yes, this could be a lovely shawl edging. After we finish this, next week will be the 3rd week on doing the knitted on I-cord. Then we'll start with the applied I-cord. Okay, so you can use this or the applied I-cord, and we'll talk about the differences. There's quite a big difference between this and applied I-cord. Okay, especially as you figure out Deborah says, well, I knew Deborah would get this. She thinks like I do. She's a very technical knitter. And then we're just going to bind off these other stitches. I always bind off in, well, for this I'm binding off in pattern. I don't always bind off in pattern, but something like this, if it's a knit, I knit it. If it's purl, I purl it. That also makes a huge difference when you're binding off ribbing. And I have videos on that too. You know, I have a video on everything, I think. Although I have a long list of videos I'd still like to make. Okay, so we're going to trim the yarn and take a look at this. What do you think? Thank you, Patricia. We'll see you next time. Be sure to come back. Fatima says, question, the project I'm starting, the wool that I will use for I-cord different color is thicker one ply than the body stockinette stitch. Is it possible to do integrated, avoiding the short row would work? You'd have to make a swatch. You'd have to swatch it and see how it looks. Isn't that cool? Look how the cast on and the bind off go. Let's look at the other side. There's our cable. Here's our 2 columns of purls, or knits on the wrong side. And there's our I-cord edge with the short rows. So, isn't this cute? Can you imagine, you know, having several sets of cables? And this could be a headband, it could be a scarf, it could be a cowl. What about a hat? What about, like, if it was wider and this was the brim of the hat that went around this and then you did the crown? You know, I can just see all kinds of possibilities for this. Isn't that cool? So, this has been a little bit over an hour. I think that's enough for today. I hope you gave me a thumbs up. I only see 39 so far. And be sure to leave me a comment on the video if you watch it again. Watch for the little, I'm going to attach the other videos that go with this. Some of them I've already made in the past, and they'll be linked up here in the corner. And I will make new videos. Watch for those on doing the mitered corner. And we're also going to talk about, we'll be talking about the difference. This is a really good one. I-cord cast on versus I-cord bind off, and some pitfalls with the I-cord cast on. You know, for those of you who've tried it, you probably know what I'm talking about, that it always leaves that first row of really loose stitches, and I don't think there's anything you can do to avoid that. Let me see if I have missed any questions, okay? Andy, question, when will boot camp start? Probably, this is my goal. So it's being edited, probably about 1 more week on being edited, just for crossing the T's and dotting the I's, correct periods and stuff like that. Then I have some volunteers who are going to be my guinea pigs to do a quick run through. I'll probably do 2 classes a week. That will take 5 weeks. Okay, because there's 10 lessons, there's 10 classes. Then I will take signups. And so it's probably going to be in about 6 weeks. But I think that you're going to really, really like it. It's going to be awesome. So, homework, Fatima. Yes, there's going to be homework. I'm going to give you homework to do this swatch right here with the cable cast on and the cable bind off, plus the short rows in the side. And I'm going to give you homework to make this swatch here with the purl column plus the buttonhole. So you're going to have 2 swatches for homework. And I'll write those up and they'll be underneath the video probably within the next 24 hours. I'll try to do it right now, but usually right after this is over, I kind of have to take a little breather, and I sometimes take a nap. So I'll try to get the homework up today. If not, it will be up tomorrow. Let me see if there's any other questions. Evelyn says, thank you so much. Yes, thank you. Thank you for watching and commenting and participating, because it makes it very fun for me. I'm looking to see if there's any. Now, Evelyn said something about a purse handle. You have to keep in mind, remember I showed these two here, the difference between the 2-stitch I-cord stretchability and the 3-stitch I-cord. I don't know that I-cord, unless you put something, run it through the center that stabilizes it to keep it from stretching, it will stretch a lot. The 2-stitch I-cord's pretty stiff, so it would be good. Let me see if there's any other questions here. So let's see. Oh, hi, Margot. Getting my If I missed your question, you have a moment to post it again while I'm looking through here. I like the practice brushing your teeth with your left hand. That's a good one. And it's going to be fun when we do the cast on and bind offs that go together, because what I'll do when I do those is I'll tell you the attributes and the drawbacks for each one. I'll also give you examples of when you would use it and why you would use it. I'm not going to just teach you how to do it. That's how I am. I teach you why. Because if you understand why, it's much easier to remember to do it, and you'll apply it in the proper circumstance. Cindy says that green yarn is really green. Yes, I think I need maybe a pastel color. I'll work on it. So anyway, I'm going to let you go, and I'll see you. Oh, this Saturday on my live stream, I'm interviewing Roxanne Richardson. You know, she has a YouTube channel too. And so I'm going to be interviewing her on Saturday at 2 o'clock. You may want to tune in for that. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a win-win for Rox and I. And I think I'm really looking forward to it. And then I also have lined up coming up in the future. I'm not sure which dates yet. I have Stephen B. Lined up, and Dee Gilpin. Dee Gilpin does yarn. She's from Scotland, Ireland. She's from Ireland. And so she's lined up too. And if you have any suggestions, be sure to put them on my Ravelry page or Facebook page for me to contact people to interview. So we'll see you next time. Have a great week. Thanks for joining me. Happy knitting. I'll let you go. Bye-bye.